welcome. It's a pleasure to open this session. The work we are sharing today focuses on central concern in higher education, how institutions, particularly those in rural contexts, can act as catalysts for equity. So we are a group of researchers who are spread across India from different regions. We have Professor Rajeshwari, who's from Kurukshetra, from in the west north side of India. We've got Professor Polly Waklin from northeast, from Assam state. We've got Professor Abdul Ghafoor, who's from University of Calicut, Kerala, down south in India. Professor Dhaneshri from west side of India, and Professor Gajpal Singh, who is from the central region. Welcome everyone, and also welcome to our UK team, Professor Emily, Professor Anne, Arokia, and all who are joining. So this presentation is based on NIPA, my institute, National Institute of Educational Planning and Administration, and University of Warwick collaborative research project, bringing together institutions and researchers across contexts. Our presentation reflects a collaborative effort and looks not only at access to higher education, but also at the less visible question of how students make choice within it. Next slide, please. Let me briefly outline how the presentation is structured. We begin by situating higher education access and choice in the Indian context. We will then move and examine the role of institutions and faculty members in shaping these processes, drawing on evidence across multiple regions. We will conclude with reflections on what this means for strengthening equity-oriented institutional practices. Next slide, please. So our work is grounded in collaborative efforts across a range of institutions and regions. So this study brings together state universities, so universities supported by the state governments, provinces, and their affiliated government colleges across multiple regions of India. So as the map indicates, the India's map, the institutions are located in provinces across Northeast, West, North, South, and Central regions of India, covering diverse social and educational contexts. This matters for two reasons: the diversity and what we've tried to cover. It allows us to understand how access and equity are shaped by local realities. And second, it highlights the role of rural serving institutions, which are often the first and sometimes the only point of entry into higher education for many students. So these institutions are not peripheral, they are central to the expansion of higher education. Next slide, please, Emily. So it is within this varied context that the question of access and equally the question of choice becomes particularly significant. So higher education in India, so why focus on higher education and access and choice in India? Higher education in India is in a phase of massification, bringing in large numbers of first generation higher education learners and also socially and economically disadvantaged learners. And in this context, while we have the enrollment has increased, social disparities in access persist, and inequalities are also evident in the choices students make across institutions, courses, and locations. So it is therefore important to look not only at access, but also at choice within higher education, where many inequalities continue to operate. So while affirmative action policies in India, in the form of reservation or the quota system, reserve seats for students from socially disadvantaged groups, students from socially disadvantaged groups often face challenges in navigating higher education, particularly due to limited access to reliable guidance. Now, this is where institutions, especially rural serving HEIs and faculty members, play a critical role as a source of guidance and connections between communities they serve and the higher education that they provide. So, within this context, I now hand over to Emily to take this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Nidhi. So I'll just, in a few minutes, lay out some of the kind of background literature, context rationale for the study. If we kind of looking at the way that disadvantage plays into access and choice in relation to higher education in India, there are, of course, many intersecting axes of disadvantage. And I'll just lay out a few here just to give some of the picture. So firstly, there are, of course, a range of social constraints, including gender, caste, and rurality. And this is related not just to a reduced likelihood of accessing higher education, but also to more limited or possibly unreliable choices around higher education. There are still issues of underrepresentation of certain groups in higher education, such as Muslim students and particularly Muslim women students in India, although this is improving. Disability is still a relatively under-researched area, but we are aware that there is discrimination based on disability or just a lack of awareness of and institutional accommodations for disabilities in higher education. Gender continues to intersect with access and choice, and this is in spite of the fact that there is now gender parity of enrollment in undergraduate higher education in India. At the same time, higher education choice is still very much influenced, for instance, by conservative families being unwilling to send their daughters very far away for higher education, which limits the choice of institution. And we must also mention those who identify as LGBTQ or non-heterosexual in some way may struggle to reach higher education if they may have faced familial social prejudice due to their identity. And there are locational constraints. The rural-urban divide is a really strong one. Remote rural areas still suffer from issues of lack of provision of institutions and issues of transport to reach those institutions as well. So looking at this kind of span of different axes of disadvantage, we can see that higher education institutions might have a very strong role to play in improving access to reliable information about higher education choices, but they are, in the Indian context, somewhat under-acknowledged as potential institutional actors in the kind of access field. And similarly, we might say that faculty members might be vital sources of information about higher education, especially in those rural semi-urban areas where there may be very little previous generational experience of higher education. But again, their potential is somewhat underutilized at the moment. If we lay out something of a kind of international field, and doing this quite quickly due to the time constraints, but just to give a sense of the field to which we are contributing, we have explored across what the kind of international evidence says about, for example, what even higher education outreach initiatives include. So this is any activities that are aimed to inform or guide prospective students with their higher education choices. We're interested in outreach as being a kind of remedy, if you like, or solution to issues of higher education choice. So outreach can include taster sessions, like experiences of attending a university and seeing what it's like. They can also extend to long school holiday or vacation outreach programs that might be more kind of intensive. And there may also be programs that are delivered sort of intermittently throughout the academic year, or even pre-degree courses at higher education institutions that prepare students to then access higher education. And at the kind of macro end, there can be quite large higher education outreach funding schemes that then providers can bid for and do different initiatives within that. So that gives a bit of a sense of the scope. In India, there's less of a history of higher education outreach than in some other countries where it's much more established. But private universities are establishing outreach kind of specialists, if you like, whereas the state-funded institutions rely on the affirmative action policies that Nidhi just mentioned to fulfill their social justice mission. But a couple of outreach activities, examples include the Gyan Jyoti, which is a life cycle program involving secondary school level mentoring, and also a kind of program targeting the issues of representation of women in STEM. There's a pre-access kind of pipeline program, again aiming at secondary school, high school rather. We have been particularly interested in the role of faculty members and where they might be serving an agenda of higher education outreach, particularly because, as I said a minute ago, they have often a good level of knowledge of what higher education options there are out there. And it has, in the international field, that role of faculty members has been neglected with a few exceptions. Faculty members are often sort of thrown into a bag and discussed with other actors like widening participation officers. Usually in countries where this agenda is more developed, there are specific members of staff who are employed to actually implement these policies, which means that faculty members may also have a limited role. We have to acknowledge that there are structural factors that may or may not mean that faculty members are even able to or motivated to engage in higher education. For instance, if they're not necessarily identifying with the local community, or if they're too pressured with their workload, or if there's no career incentive to do so. However, we would say that the evidence does say that early contact with faculty members is valuable for students from disadvantaged groups and might help them to also integrate better into higher education when they get there if they feel more like they can talk to faculty members. So very briefly, just to sketch out the rationale for our study, we've already set out some of the things that we do already know about this field and others that we're less sure of. So in terms of the Indian landscape here, we want to know more about how higher education policy on outreach, where it is mentioned, and on the functioning of higher education institutions may or may not affect how institutions can be involved in outreach, how the location of the institution affects things, how faculty members perceive their own role and what their involvement might be in outreach, what students might expect from faculty members, what training may or may not exist or be needed, and whether the outreach itself is operating in a gender-sensitive, socially just manner. So we absolutely, in this project, we recognize the potential role of rural serving state universities and government colleges as higher education knowledge hubs. And we were aiming to explore, consolidate, and maximize the role of these institutions and develop a form of outreach that does itself not reproduce inequalities. I'd now like to hand it over to Arokia to talk more about the project research design. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Henderson and Professor Sabharwal, for setting the context of the study. I will walk us, the audience, through the methodology on which the presentation is based. So this presentation draws from phase 1 of a 4-phase research study. The aim of phase 1 was to explore current higher education outreach practices across different regions in India through structured institutional approaches or through informal basis by various stakeholders of their own volition. A mixed methods approach using qualitative and quantitative method and a comparative approach involving multiple states, as mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, was adopted. So these states were Assam, Chhattisgarh, Haryana, Kerala, Maharashtra, and Odisha. Within each state, 2 types of institutions where undergraduate education was offered was sampled. This comparative design was important to comprehend cross-state similarities and differences in higher education context and policy context, but it also offered like inter-institutional comparisons. The findings of phase 1 of the research study were invaluable for designing phase 2 of the project, which took the form of co-developing, piloting, and evaluating a continuous professional learning program for faculty members on higher education outreach. So for an international audience, it might be useful to know that the undergraduate education in India is provided at universities and colleges, which are affiliated with universities and provide higher education at a more local level. So, in each state, 4 higher education institutions, henceforth known as HEIs, all of which were offering undergraduate programs, were selected as institutional case studies. These higher education institutions, 4 higher education institutions selected in each state, are as follows: 1 government funded state university, SU; 3 government funded colleges, namely Government College in Depth, in this presentation referred to as GCID; Government College A, GCA; Government College B, GCB. All 3 colleges, that is GCID, GCA, and GCB, were affiliated to the state university. Overall, state university, SU, and government college in depth, GCID, were studied in depth with more methods deployed, and the other 2 colleges, GCA and GCB, were researched to a lesser degree but offered a comparator to compare with GCID, the in-depth college. A visual elaboration of the sample selected at each state is shown in the current slide and aligns with the research design of phase 1. At the state university, if I may request to zoom out on the state university section in the slide. Thank you. And government college in depth. Each research team explored experiences of 3 stakeholders, that is institutional leaders, faculty members, and first-year undergraduate students. Each state team interviewed institutional leaders from SU and GCID, such as college principal or senior staff members of the SU, to share personal and professional details through a brief profile. This was then followed by a semi-structured interview, which focused on institutional leaders, biographical trajectories, actions, and perceptions of higher education outreach. As the focus of the study entirely is on faculty members, their experiences, higher education trajectories, initiatives, perceptions were explored through census survey and a 3-month-long interview diary interview study with 5 faculty members from SU and GCID. In the census survey, all faculty members from SU and GCID were invited to participate. The survey explored their biographical, educational, and professional trajectories, along with looking into the professional development courses that they had participated in and the higher education outreach initiatives and activities that they engaged in. For the interview diary interview study, 5 faculty members from SU and GCID each were invited to participate. The initial semi-structured interview invited faculty members to share their higher education trajectories, actions, perceptions of higher education outreach. Following these interviews, the faculty members were introduced, invited, and inducted into a solicited diary study for 3 months. This was an interval-based diary study, and they were invited to record their experiences and initiatives of higher education outreach once every 2 weeks for 3 months. At the end of the diary study period, faculty members were invited to participate in a post-diary interview to share their reflections and further thoughts on the outreach experiences that they had in the past 3 months that they had documented in their solicited diaries. The third group of participants were first-year undergraduate students. They were invited to participate in a survey to comprehend the demographic details of the undergraduate students and also the outreach experience that they had experienced while getting admission to the higher education institution. Further, 2 focus group discussions were conducted with 5 undergraduate students per group from across different social backgrounds and disciplines and across gender as well. And from the 2 focus group discussions, 6 undergraduate students were invited to participate in one-on-one semi-structured interviews to share their experiences of higher education outreach, if any. In the other 2 colleges, that is GCA and GCB, we could go back to the slide. Thank you, Emily. So the GCA and GCB research team members, 2 stakeholders were involved in the study, that is institutional leaders and faculty members. So each state research team interviewed institutional leaders of GCA and GCB. Additionally, 5 one-on-one interviews were conducted with faculty members of GCA and GCB. Apart from the primary data, administrative data related to faculty members and undergraduate students were collected from each higher education institution by the state teams. Because higher education outreach is an underexplored area in India, we aim to use as many methods as possible to capture experiences and perspectives and activities. So without much ado, I now invite all the state research teams, first Assam, to share their interesting research findings from the data. Thank you.
So thank you, Arokia. Just to interrupt Polly before we start, I have been given the job of making sure that we all keep to as much time as possible. So I hope you don't mind if I give you a warning if towards the end of each presentation. So we have time for questions. Thank you. Bye-bye.
It's much needed because thank you so much, Arokia, for setting the tone, and the rest on the former speakers also. I know, like by looking at the slides, you'll realize that how difficult it was to concise down to these findings, because this whole slides are an outcome of huge amount of work that has gone in. So when we look at Assam, which is one of the state which is taken from Northeast, and when we look at the access of higher education, we find that when we look at the rural students proportion across institute, in the state university, there is almost equally divided, but it is more leaning towards rural students, which comes to 48.1%. And in state university, 47.7% were students from the urban area. And when we did the study, they were the current students studying in the first year of the UG program. And when we look at the proportion of students or nature of students in the government colleges, it ranged from 60 to almost 90%. So it was more than 60%. More than 60% of the students studying in the government colleges, they were either from rural or semi-urban area. And when we asked them about, it is based on perception study. So when we asked them about the perception regarding the comfort level of the rural student, in Guwahati, in the state university, majority of the faculty members believed that the students were very comfortable in choosing the state university. And one of the key factors that emerged in the interviews of the faculty members, it was really because of the low fee structure. The students are more attracted, or they are more comfortable to study in the state university. Whereas when we talk about the government colleges, the faculty members believe that the rural students were comfortable, but the factors were different. One of the factors which emerged in one of the in the in-depth college, they felt that it was because of the alumni who happens to be their parents. They feel very comfortable, which was a bit different from the other colleges. And in terms of the perception regarding the activities to attract rural students, in the state university, the FM believed and reported that the institute conducts activity to attract rural students. And it was 54.5% of the faculty believed they responded to that question, whereas it is far more higher when we talked about when we looked at it from the government college perspective. They said that 97.9% of the faculty members, they believe that and they perceive that the college conducts activities to attract rural students. Next slide, please. Now, when we had an interview with the state university, when we had an interview with the institutional leader, and we wanted to know about the perception about their perspective about higher education outreach, there was a variation. In the state university, the institutional leader felt that this type of outreach was more or less a personal and a social responsibility, and that he said towards the initial part of his interview. But later on, towards the later part of the interview, he acknowledged that these type of efforts, higher education outreach activities, should be institutionalized. And he reported that there is a minimum amount of academic outreach or higher education outreach in the state university, because the pressure of student into the university is already high. So if they have such initiative, then the pressure will be, it will further accelerate. And when we talk about, and when we look at the analyze the perspective of the institutional leaders in terms of the government college, in one government college we found that they have a very systematic and intensive practice of higher education outreach, and the institutional leader have taken almost everybody along with him in higher education outreach. The faculty members are involved, the office bearers are involved, the alumni are involved, and whenever when the new courses starts or when the new program starts, they start disseminating information through different WhatsApp group for higher education outreach. And the institutional leaders of the other government college stated, and it came out very strongly, that now it has become a need with the new education policy coming up. The new education policy 2020 has changed the perspective. Now it has become, higher education outreach has almost become an essential requirement, more so to enhance students' enrollment. Now, when we studied about the facilities, which is facilities to access higher education and where the faculty members are involved, the proportions are a bit different between the state university and government college. But if you look at the slide, look at the graph, which is provided towards the lower part of this slide, you'll see that almost the causes are similar. The facility which is given to the by the state university and the government college is more or less similar. The highest proportion is which their students, faculty members are involved, are choosing the courses of the subject. And next is advice on whether to go for higher education or other options. And this is also similar with the government colleges. And this faculty members are involved in providing advices in all different aspects in both in the state university and the government colleges. Next slide, please. Now, when we look at the facilitating access to higher education in terms of government colleges, these colleges were providing higher education to the tribal people, to minority-dominated areas, and one of the colleges was established in a forest area, tribal-dominated forest area, where the students at times encounter human-elephant conflict while going back from the colleges. And it was from the study, it revealed that these colleges that we have chosen were the only higher education institute within a range of 20 to 25 kilometer, and majority of the students in two of the higher government colleges were first generation learner. And since they were located in this higher education institute, were located in the rural area, the students from the rural area have access to this education, to this higher education institute. And another interesting fact that emerged was that different departments, not as an institute, but different department within the college, they adopt different villages. And they adopt different villages more so for community service. Along with that, they also do higher education outreach, but their focus is more on community services, like donating school items. And they have also built up some strong connection with the colleges. And the faculty members of government colleges, they happen to visit the school more regularly than the faculty members of the state university. And the faculty members of the government colleges, all the three government colleges, they encourage the students to visit the higher education institute in the form of library visit, in the form of lab visit. Also, they allow them, or they are also allow them to use the different instruments, and they also invite them to participate in different sports events. And all these expenditures are basically beared by the respective higher education institute. Another interesting program to facilitate access to higher education is a Tarang program, which is done by one of the higher education institute. And Tarang program is an interactive web web page where the school can interact with the respective higher education institute, and the higher education institute can interact with the schools, and there they write about their needs, and like if they have a scarcity of science teachers or science education. So that interaction is happening, and that's a very, very interesting type of higher education outreach we have noticed in the study. And
Polly, 1 minute to go.
Okay, so the faculty members are very much strongly involved in guiding the students, and some of the students have now are admitted in premium institute like IITs and all. They also have. So I'll go to the next slide, please. Now, when we look at the perception of IELTS on accessing higher education in the government college, it is found that around 25 to 40 higher education outreach activities they have conducted. They have gone to the schools, and I have already stated that this college happens to be the only college in the region, and that gives a preference to and that is a preferred institute by the economically weaker section, and also for the girls, because mostly belonging to the minority community. And FMs are involved in the admission process. Then also hostel facility in one of the institute is one of the reason of facilitating this assessment. Next slide, please. And when we look at the key findings, we found that in terms of advice provided, there is a great disparity. In the state university, 56.3% are male and only 43.8% female are providing advices. And in the government colleges, almost it is same, government college ID. In the state university, the place of residence of the faculty members, it is more tilting towards the urban area and lesser towards the rural area. And in terms of government college ID, there are more faculty residing in the rural area and then in the urban area. And most of the faculty members from both the institute, state university and government college ID, belongs to general category, and majority of them are Hindus, and very few are from Muslim religion. I'll go to the next slide. Last slide. Next one, please. Last slide. Yeah. So if we go to the key findings, I'll just give a gist. There are different type of activities which is happening, but not a very, very specific type of activities like higher education outreach. And the teachers are involved, but teachers are basically providing advices to the neighbors, then more to the students. So with that, I would like to wind up because I don't want to take the time of that.
Thank you very much indeed, Polly. That's lovely. Thank you very much. Now from the northeast to the south and to Kerala, over to you, Professor Kapoor.
Thank you, madam. Good day, one and all. Greetings from Kerala. Welcome to the presentation on our findings from Kerala. Kerala presents a unique higher education landscape characterized by high literacy rate, a favorable gender parity index of 1.44, and a dense network of approximately 46 colleges per lakh population, significantly higher than the national average. Despite these progressive indicators, significant gaps remain in how students from rural and marginalized backgrounds navigate their choices within this system of higher education. Our study focused on 4 key institutions: a major state university, an in-depth government college, and 2 additional government colleges, GCA and GCB, all of which serve predominantly rural communities. We examined the current patterns of outreach and the critical roles played by institutional leaders and FMs as knowledge bridges for these students. Next slide, please. At the institutional level, we found that rural students constitute the vast majority of the student body, ranging from 75% to 95% at the state university and up to 100% in the government colleges. These students are primarily attracted to the state university due to its affordability, while government college attracts them through fee concession, scholarships, and their physical proximity to the local villages. However, access does not always mean ease of navigation of these students to these institutions. While rural students generally feel comfortable choosing these institutions, they face significant difficulties adapting to the university culture. They often lack information on course selection and employability prospects. Furthermore, systemic barriers persist, such as infrastructure deficits, limited hostel availability, and financial constraints. For many undergraduate students, particularly in rural areas, cultural factors like marriage during the ongoing program, for example, their undergraduate program, and also emerge as a significant barrier to continuing their education. Next slide. Our research highlights contrasting roles of institutional leaders in these four institutions. At the state university, for example, there is a notable disconnect. The leadership tends to communicate through nodal officers which they have appointed in the colleges rather than interacting directly with students. While the state university leadership prioritizes students' interests, they often rely on the university's prestige and centralized admission portals, viewing active rural recruitment as less of a priority for them. In sharp contrast, leaders at the government colleges are highly engaged in direct outreach. A striking example is the principal of GCA College, whose own background as an orphan shaped his mission. He actively partners with NGOs to conduct admission guidance sessions directly at rural high schools. Similarly, the leader of GCB serves as a trusted and reputable advisor within the local tribal community. These findings suggest that in government colleges, the personal mission of leader is often primarily the driver of institutional outreach. Faculty members are the most crucial frontline resource for these students. Interestingly, 84% of the faculty at the state university and 80% at the in-depth government college are first-generation academics themselves. This shared background creates a strong sense of social responsibility. Nearly 95% of the faculty provide pre-admission advice regarding institutional choices and application processes. However, this outreach is predominantly informal. Instead of using structured professional channels, faculty members leverage their own personal networks, providing guidance to neighbors, extended family, and even domestic staff. While their motivation is high, driven by a commitment to student development and social duty, their efforts remain fragmented and unsupported by official institutional frameworks. We did, however, find proactive models like Vazhigatti, that means a guide in Malayalam, initiative at GCA, which specifically trains current college students to counsel and mentor rural high schoolers. The systematic implementation of outreach in Kerala is constrained by three major factors: insufficient funding, heavy faculty workloads, and a perception among some faculty that outreach is an external duty rather than a core academic responsibility. To overcome these, we must leverage existing state-level facilitators. One such opportunity is Shastrayan, which is an open house science program at the Calicut University that brings school students onto campus to demystify the university environment. Another critical bridge is the network of around 3,000 Akshaya centers across Kerala. These are the digital service hubs which are essential for rural students who lack the technical know-how or equipment to navigate online admissions and document uploads. Integrating outreach into the objectives of the IQAC, that is internal quality assurance cells of the college, is another vital step toward formalizing these efforts. Looking ahead, future outreach strategies must focus on enhancing institutional appeal through employability. The State University has the potential to expand add-on vocational courses and internship opportunities to meet student demands for job readiness. Furthermore, community engagement can be significantly amplified by partnering with Kudumbashree, that is Kerala's massive women-led poverty eradication mission, which is one of the largest of the world itself of that type. By engaging with mothers directly through these local networks of women, institutions can address parental concerns regarding course affordability and safety, which are often the deciding factors for rural students. Our participants also recommend massive community level orientation programs and aggressive use of social media to reach wider rural audiences. Finally, our study identifies external practices that can serve as a roadmap for institutionalizing outreach. Effective strategies include for example, issuing regional language press releases to announce vacancies, hosting open days for prospective students, and fostering formal collaborations with the local village governments. Conducting systematic house visit programs and leveraging local media for endorsements are proven methods to actively reach the most undeserved students, such as those in tribal and coastal areas. By moving from a reactive model to a proactive community integrated approach, Kerala's higher education institutions can truly fulfill their mission as equity catalyst for rural India. Thank you for active listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Gafoor. Admirable timekeeping. So we now move from the north. From the south. We go back north again, and we're off to Haryana this time for the findings from Haryana and Professor Rajeshri.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. And I shall be presenting the findings from North region and the perspective of institutional leaders and faculty members in rural serving HEIs, and how do they perceive and how do they practice higher education outreach activities. In case of the perspective of institutional leaders on higher education outreach access, it was observed that the institutional leaders of all 4 HEIs, State University and selected government colleges, they were aware that rural students basically dominate. But the dominance was overwhelming in case of government colleges, which was 90 to 95%. But in case of state university, it was around 60%. So 40% was urban students in case of state university. And all 4 IELs institutional leaders, they perceived that geographical location, like the location of the higher education institutions themselves, were comfortable. They thought that their own location in rural setting is a natural advantage. And they also felt that it was the low fees, and in case of government colleges, proximity to home was also considered as a natural advantage, and they felt that students felt comfortable because they were near their own home, and they had the advantage of low fees. As far as state university institutional leader is concerned about, his perspective is concerned about higher education outreach practices, basically he initially struggles to differentiate between what is community outreach and what is higher education outreach. For him, National Service Scheme, which is a scheme of Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, where students basically perform community services. So he considered that to be, and he said that this is the scheme through which they are practicing higher education outreach activities. And he also perceived that there is no problem for marginalized section of students to enroll in higher education because there is fee waiver. They are getting fellowship. But later on, when we had spoken to him, state university institutional leader agreed that yes, there is no organized higher education outreach activity at the institution level. In comparison to that, all three government college institutional leaders were not only aware of higher education outreach practices, but they were actively carrying out those activities. It was largely to boost enrollment, and they were carrying out both activities.
Rajeshri, one second, Rajeshri. Sorry to interrupt you, but I think you might have got something touching your microphone. It's a bit. That's better, much better.
Okay, am I audible now?
Much better, much better.
Okay. So I was telling about government colleges. Institutional leaders of government colleges were not only aware, but they were actively carrying out higher education activities, outreach practices, and they were carrying out at both level. These were dedicated outreach practices as well as NSS activities. What kind of activities they basically performed? They formulated pre-admission committees. They used posters and hoardings for the admissions and they had put those posters and hoardings in front of their colleges, on the bus stops, and at very many other places. And one of the institutional leader also told us that in his own college, there were very low enrollment of commerce students. Out of 80 seats, there were only 17 enrollment, and he asked, along with the faculty members of the college, and he asked them to go to nearby school, higher secondary school, and the enrollment basically increased to 35. Next slide, please. So if we consider the perspective of faculty members in a state university as well as in colleges, then majority of faculty members in state university believed, almost half of them, that state university is not conducting any organized kind of higher education outreach practices, but they said they themselves are involved at individual levels in HE outreach practices. And how they were involved in, they said they were being invited by the schools for invited lectures, and some of them were involved through NGOs, and basically their involvement depended upon how active they were in their social life. So their involvement varied. In fact, the one who was more active was more actively involved with the community and practicing higher education outreach practices. In comparison to government colleges, majority of faculty members reported that their institution was involved, and they were also involved in higher education outreach practices. As I told in the last slide also, that they were putting hoardings and hoardings and posters, and they were doing all kinds of campaign for HE outreach for increasing the enrollment. And in in-depth government college, about 92%, an overwhelming number of faculty members endorsed that they were doing higher education outreach activities. Rather, in one of the colleges, because the culturally faculty members knew that the girls' parents won't send their daughters to city for education, so they voluntarily pooled up funds, and they campaigned door to door by involving their own students and recording their voice. They had hired a auto rickshaw, and they basically campaigned door to door, and that is how they involved community and parents for higher education enrollment of girls in that particular village. Next slide, please.
Rajeshri, could I just say you've had 2/3 of your time. You've only got 3 minutes left.
Okay. So I'll just hurry up. Basically, faculty members strongly believe that there is a need for guidance, and they were individually providing that guidance, and individual efforts were huge. But where they were providing the guidance, it was reported that though they were advising school students, but their advice was in state university was largely in their own personal circle, that is to relatives, to neighbors, and villagers, laborers, shopkeepers, etc. Next slide, please. So whom they were advising, it is well known, but on which topic they were giving the advice. In fact, in case of state university and in case of colleges, the larger proportion of advice was being given on choice of course and subjects. In case of colleges, it was also like whether they should go for higher education or they should opt for some other option. But in case of state university, it was comparatively less. But in case of colleges, the teachers basically told that when they were advising, students were asking advice on almost all issues, ranging from choice of subject to financial implications, to whether what course they choose, what is its employability, and what are the transport facilities available, so how to fill up the forms. So they were advising not only on one particular thing, rather it was a holistic guidance almost on all the issues. So the next is
1 minute left. 1 minute left, Rajeshri.
So the challenges basically, the teachers told that it was lack of funds, which was being reported highly in case of like how to go for higher education outreach practices. They said they don't have any funds. Then workload was also being raised as an issue. But in case of government colleges, teachers said that it is the digital divide which was also affecting, because there was the policy of online admission, and students in rural areas had lack of digital infrastructure as well as technical know-how. And also there was urban fascination. As I told you initially, the teachers basically felt that the location of college itself was a advantage, but then they said ki college location is also a bane, because of low connectivity. And there is also fascination of abroad in case of Haryana among the youth, because they consider that to be a very better quality of life. So it is difficult to get students in the colleges, in higher education in case of Haryana. What are the challenges? I'll be just finishing it. The societal perception is a challenge, means some of the communities still think that higher education, basically the places of higher education are places of enjoyment rather than serious learning. Then there were some employment linkages is one among them. Lack of infrastructure in terms of teachers in certain stream was also pointed out. And there were some in case of colleges like subject mismatch. And what can be the solutions? I'll be just finishing up. Next slide, please. The solution was the state university institutional leader also suggested that there should be an outreach cell, and there should be a dedicated team, and outreach practices, HE outreach, should be institutionalized. And there should be, the solution can come when we have career counseling camps or school visits. In case of colleges, the institutional leaders and the faculty members also suggested that there should be some offline admission policy also, because there is centralized admission which is hampering the access to higher education for some disadvantaged group of students. And then they said, if there is early intervention in the sense that if you catch the students early, when they are in 10th or 11th grade, and you provide them informed choices, that can be one very big thing which can improve access to higher education. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Rajeshri. And now we move a little bit further south to the centre and to Maharashtra and to Professor Dhaneshri. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne. It is really a great pleasure to be presenting here the insights we got from this study regarding access to higher education and what are the perspectives of institutional leaders, faculty members, and what students have to say. So first we begin as the other team members have done. We begin with rural student proportion across institutions. But here what I want to just put forth is that this proportion, as you can see in this first slide of Maharashtra, the rural student proportion across institutions is based on their place of permanent residence. And therefore, we see that in GCID, there is almost a 50-50% divide between rural and urban students, while in State University, the proportion of urban students is 56.44 and rural students are 43.66%. But we have to keep this in mind that this is based on the information that we gathered during the survey, and the students reported
Okay, we seem to have lost Professor Dhaneshri at the moment. Let's hope we can get her back. Okay, perhaps we could move on to the next speaker and come back to, oh, wait a minute, what do you think? I think we might move on therefore to Chhattisgarh and to Professor Gajpal, and then we'll come back to Dhaneshri.
Hello, Anne. I have informed them.
Yeah. Okay. We'll put that in the chat. We'll put it in the chat. Please go ahead. Sorry about that. That slight glitch.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am. I'm presenting Central East region perspective. Chhattisgarh state, as you know, Chhattisgarh state is known as a tribal state, and more than 1/3 population is belong to tribal community. So main findings regarding our survey is that the institutional perspective in State University moderately balanced rural representation 48.8%. As compared to this, government colleges, the percentage of rural students are high because the most of the population of our state is situated in the rural area. Comfort level of rural students is as State University and government colleges faculty members believe that rural students felt comfortable choosing their respective institutions. Next slide, ma'am, please. In regarding the institutional perspective, the one very significant program started by the government of Chhattisgarh Higher Education Department, that is known as Posak Vidyalaya Sampark Abhiyan. It is just for the link between the schools and higher educations. The main purpose of this program is aimed to identify the promoting students in high schools and guide them towards higher education opportunities. The initiative utilize regular visit, workshop, and awareness program to connect with the students. And another important thing is that to ensure that students and their family are well informed regarding academic resources and scholarship. The main purpose of this program is to increase the number of students in higher educations. Next, please. I would like to just explain the objective of the Posak Abhiyan, madam. Please.
Please.
Yes. The key, just a key feature. Key feature is not very clear soon, ma'am. Key feature of yes, slide. No, downside, ma'am. Yes, please.
Ma'am. Okay, ma'am. I think it's.
Okay. Yes. Please. Yeah. It's okay. Next, please. Yeah. Yes. Okay. The key feature of Twitter school outreach program, which is known here, Poshak Vidyalaya Sampark Abhiyan, is that mentorship support to the school students. Students motivate for registration in higher education. Awareness activity through the Poshak Abhiyan. The college teachers visited the schools and aware the school students. And community involvement. The one important factor is this program is that during the interaction of college teachers with the school students, community people are also present. And another key features of this program is educational supports, sharing teaching methods, resource, and best practice. And another thing is that the institutional perspective, Inspire program, which is very aspirational program of Higher Education Department of Government of India. And in a state university, more than 10 Inspire program was conducted in our institutions, especially in the state university. The main purpose of this program is that to increase the science students for higher education. This was the main objective of the Inspire programs, and which is conducted in state university once in a year. Next, please. Regarding the role of facilitating access to higher education, a significant majority of faculty members provide guidance on undergraduate options and processing before the admission. Most faculty members, both in state university and college also, reported that outreach is happening, but often in a limited and informal manner, because there is no systematic cell related with this. Guidance mainly centered on deciding whether to pursue higher education, selecting specific colleges and universities, choosing course or subject, and navigating the application and admission process. Guidance is preliminary provided to extended family, community groups, and neighbors also. Navigating the admission process, 12.3%, and highlighting employability prospects, 11.2%, were the topic most frequently identified by the faculty members to attract the rural students and support their higher education choice. Faculty members across state university and government college reported that rural students are generally comfortable in selecting their colleges. Challenges. We having some challenges regarding the widening participation in higher education, especially in the context of rural area. Outreach is often viewed as voluntary work rather than a integral part of academic responsibility. Insufficient funding, similar type of findings we have seen in the case of Haryana and Kerala also. Due to resource constraints, activities are often centered on students enrolled drive and scholarship awareness or skill development schemes. Right. Next, please. Yes. The future opportunities, as my previous speakers also said about it, to establish dedicated outreach and guidance cell to coordinate school visit and admission awareness, as we have seen in University of Warwick having separate cell for outreach program. A systematic outreach cell is needed in university and college. Another is the investing in faculty trainings and providing toward the facility regarding outreach programs. And faculty can enhance their reach by forming collaboration with the local schools. Yeah. And yes, to expand outreach using digital platform. Yes, next, please. Yes. Thank you, madam. Thank you, please.
Ma'am, your mic is off, ma'am. And ma'am.
Thank you, Professor Gajpal, for stepping into the breach, as it were, and for presenting the Chhattisgarh framework, and also hi to your colleagues as well. So let's see if we can go back to Maharashtra and pick up where we were with Professor Dhanashree. Over to you, Dhanashree.
Thanks again, Professor Ann. So whatever we proposed, technology actually disposed. So coming back to, again, back to square one, and I will start with slide number 1. So these are some insights into what.
And you're muted, and.
Okay, can you just start with probably slide 2 or 3 so we have enough time? I think we got access, the first slide. Perhaps you could move on to the second and move from there.
Okay, no problem. We will move on to the second slide. No problem. Yeah. So this second slide, presents perspective of institutional leaders on facilitating access to higher education at institutional level. So what we find is that scholarships are a significant factor, and then affordable hostel and the earn and learn scheme of the state university, are the major support that rural students find. Actually, Professor Ann, I wanted to bring one point to the notice of all the participants of this program, that the perception of institutional leaders is very important, because what we found was that the institutional leader from state university, who happens to be the vice chancellor, he perceived that 60% of the students are rural, because this perception is what is the backbone of everything that we discuss later on. So I'm sorry, but I have to repeat this again, that whatever this thing in rural proportion across institutions, which is presented in this pie chart, actually is based on their place of permanent residence. But the perception of faculty members is very important, as well as the perception of institutional leaders is important, because their perception is based on the way students present themselves, and the institutional leaders can very well make out whether they are rural or they are basically urban. So that is what I wanted to point out. And so as our institutional leader from SU said, 60% of the students are from a rural background, and faculty members said that 50 to 70% students are from the rural background. In the GCID also, the institutional leader said that 70 to 80% of the students are from rural background, and FM's perception ranged between 40 to 90%. So that is what I wanted to say. And one thing that I want to point out here regarding comfort level of rural students is that the main thing here in the first column, the third row, if you can focus on this, seeing many other students who hail from similar rural backgrounds is the most important factor, which makes rural students feel comfortable in the SU. That is what was what we got from out of the focus group discussions also, and also from the survey that we conducted, the census survey of undergraduate students in SU and the government colleges. So now we can move on to the next slide. I know we have limited time. So promoting awareness at the state university, what we found was that everybody, the faculty members and also the institutional leader, focused on NSS camps as the main, the main thing that they relied upon was the NSS camps to promote awareness regarding higher education and its importance and enrollment. So campus initiatives like community radio is what we see in the SU. And what I want to focus upon is that the faculty members, they do proactive school visits, and in Maharashtra we call the higher secondary school 11th and 12th as junior colleges. So what we see is that the GCID has its own junior college, GCA has its own junior college, GCB has its own junior college. So the outreach is mostly focused on contacting the students in their own junior colleges. And what we have noticed is that most of the initiatives that FMs took regarding promoting awareness were self-initiated by the FMs, particularly by those who were first generation learners themselves and who came from rural background. So this is the main thing that we wish to focus upon. And I think, it is quite an eye-opener that when the faculty members are from rural background and belong to the disadvantaged community themselves, and when they are first generation learners themselves, they are more proactive in going out, even spending out of their pockets at times to bring this awareness. So we found that some of the institutional leaders and faculty members visited their villages, and during that time they made it a point to go to schools and make students and their parents also aware about importance of higher education and the opportunities available. So with regard to inclusive policies, what we found was that there are some lacunae, of course, but special admissions programs and reservations are the areas where FMs have provided guidance to rural students mainly. So this is what is the main highlight. And then community engagement practices, then there is direct interaction, as I told you. Many times it was mostly informal only. So visiting your own your own school which is placed in a rural setting. So that was what is we found mainly happening in community engagement. So it was mostly informal, that is what I can say. So perspectives of IELTS on facilitating access to higher education in this, most of the efforts again are voluntary, and the Vice Chancellor of the State University actually said that only 10% of his faculty members are involved in pre-admission counseling. So this is also an eye-opener. This is the perception of the institutional leader, and what we saw out of those standalone interviews and the faculty members whom we surveyed, the main thing that I would again like to emphasize upon is that those who are first generation learners themselves, they are more motivated towards seeing to it that more students from rural and disadvantaged backgrounds enroll for higher education. So what we found as in Chhattisgarh presentation also, the team leader focused upon not having institutionalized outreach practices. The same thing is here also, because there is limited structured guidance at the institutional level, and most of the efforts are voluntary and through the self-motivated faculty members. So the Vice Chancellor of the State University emphasized on exposure through successful professionals who are invited for talks in front of the students. But we have to, also note that these students are already in higher education. So there is a serious lack of efforts at enrolling rural or encouraging rural students to get access to higher education. With regard to government colleges, what we saw was counseling committees are very common in all the colleges. And these counseling committees, what we found was that they focused more on, getting more admissions in their own courses and in their own college, rather than giving, a broad-based advice on where to go, where to enroll. So they always, what we found from the interviews and discussion was that they insisted on getting enrollment in their own courses and in their own colleges. So faculty-led guidance and subject-specific monitoring for prospective students is only from their own point of view. That is one thing that we have noticed. So going ahead with the next slide, guidance provided by FMs to rural students.
Wrap up soon.
Mostly the guidance is concentrated on helping students decide on deciding where to apply for which course. But when it came to giving a last mile or logistical support, then there is a lack. That is what we can see. So moving on, as I have only 2 or 3 minutes left, I will just move on to the next slide, where we have seen faculty as key advisors on course selection, admission process, and career choices. And most of the guidance, as has been observed by other team leaders also, it is in their personal network only, as it is evident that it is it is given to neighbors, relatives, friends, mostly. So financial support similarities in institutional strategies can be found out, like financial support, affordable accommodation, organized counseling centers, digital platform, use of digital platform, and NSS is the most highlighted among all the government colleges as well as in the SU. So I will move on to the last slide and not take up more time. Challenges and future opportunities. So we have identified these areas where challenges are present and opportunities are also present. So I would like to focus on community involvement. You know, I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th row. 7th row, weak engagement with families and community. So what we found from the focus group discussions and the interviews that we had with faculty members and institutional leaders is that students are the best ambassadors of universities, colleges, and in general, they are the best ambassadors of higher education. So they can be, you know, this is the word of mouth is the best, thing because it is evidence based. So when these students go back to their own villages and when they engage with their relatives and friends, this word of mouth, because what we found in the focus group discussion was that most of the students said that they enrolled for higher education only because some boys and girls who from their own village, they had enrolled for higher education, and they told the importance of this rural serving higher education institution, that is the SU and the respective government colleges. And so that is the one thing that I would like to say is the most effective in in encouraging students and what we call as community involvement. So it can be best done through alumni of various institutions. So, and one last thing that I would like to say, because this is self-explaining, this table is self-explaining, but the last point or the last row is regarding some experiment, innovative approach is needed in admission policy. Like there should be preference given for first generation learners in admission. So if this strategy is adopted, then I think it will benefit the society and the rural community. So that is all from Maharashtra side. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, and well done everybody to keeping very good time. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to have a